Welcome to the Honest Providers podcast. Today I'm with my friend here, Christopher Cadenas, and we're going to go over some life experiences that he has had, not only being married to a clinician, but also his upbringing. First of all, welcome, Christopher.
Hey, how you doing, Dalton? Glad to be here.
Happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do now and your background.
I'm a mechanical engineer, and I work at a company called Air Science. And actually, I just started this year my own business of 3D printing, manufacturing, and prototyping.
Okay.
So it's called Relentless Forge, engineering and prototyping.
Awesome. Yeah. RelentlessForge.com, I think it was.
Yeah, that's the one.
So, we had a little bit of a conversation previously. We were talking about whether it's mental health, whether it's navigating the system and learning how to be true to our inner self, essentially. Growing up, I know you probably face some challenges along the way when it comes to, some would say living authentically, some would say being your true self, some would just say being a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Upbringing is pretty simple. I would say sort of this cookie cutter of a traditional Hispanic household. No one talks about feelings, or no one talks about emotions, or it's, oh, you got to be a man, you can't cry, or you can't do anything about it. Right. Growing up with that kind of ideology, given that I didn't see anything else different around me, in my mindset at that time, it was considered normal. Moving through the years and growing up and maturing and then meeting my wife at a later age, I found out that there's a whole nother side to mental health and things that I never really grew up in or knew about.
Absolutely.
It was like a really big eye-opener for me. I didn't realize the amount of stigmas and generational traumas, like never-ending cycles. It's like breaking those stereotypes, essentially. That's where I've kind of landed on.
And it's not just you. A lot of men, especially in our society and culture today, are told basically to hide our emotions and be strong. A lot of times it's not necessarily even malicious intent from our families. I know some families it can be toxic, but a lot of families, believe it or not, are going through the same thing that they went through. And it's passed down from generation to generation. What seems normal to everybody actually ends up being toxic, and no one's trying to be toxic, but it's just kind of ingrained.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just the way you were brought up, right?
Exactly. There's different scenarios for everybody. Everybody has different upbringings where they have to become someone they're not to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
For me, for example, I didn't know how to set proper boundaries. If no one is respecting my space, then they're cut off. Or I'm going to keep them at an arm's length and I'm not going to talk to them again. It was never a balance. It was always like 0 to 100. So then that was like my biggest issue. And now coming back and maturing more, it's like understanding, like, could I have done things differently? Yes. In that moment, I feel it was necessary to do it, because if not, people would just like step all over me.
Right. Yeah, you have to look out for yourself, and sometimes it's hard to identify what goes against everything that you were brought up in or around or taught to believe. I say it all the time, especially when we talk to clinicians. You got to take care of yourself before you can help other people.
Yeah, exactly.
What you ended up doing for yourself. You ended up taking care of yourself and finding the best path for you, even though it might have went against the grain from the way you were raised. It still gave you a new path and a new direction. I'm assuming that path and direction led you to where you are now.
Yeah, I would say.
So tell me a little bit about that journey.
So at the time when I met my wife now, I was about 20, she was 19. I'm 27 now. When I met her, I was not really in the right headspace. I was like very lonely, very depressed, and like isolated. At the time, I had to make those hard decisions to cut people off. Those were the only people I like actually talked to. But what I didn't realize is that the friendship wasn't really a friendship. It was just like for their benefit, not like a mutual kind of thing.
Very one-sided, yeah.
Yeah, extremely one-sided. I jumped off the deep end. And I got depressed. I like isolated myself, didn't really talk to people. I grew up pretty like spiritually and religiously. Mm-hmm. Prayed a lot at the time, because at that point I didn't know what to turn to. The only thing that made sense was to just pray about it. Right. So I prayed about it, and then eventually that's when I met my wife. We started talking extensively. We had mutual friends that we knew back in the day. By meeting her, I had a second chance to change my life around, clean myself up. At the time, I let myself go in all aspects.
It's hard to keep hope in a situation
Yeah,
like that, and to keep pushing along. Sometimes the right person, the person you pray for, the change you pray for, it comes along, and it looks like exactly what you're talking about.
exactly. And I'm grateful about it. At that time, not only was she supportive, but then also she challenged me in ways that at the time felt a little bit of like, oh, she's kind of coming off too hard. But then in retrospect, it was for a better purpose. I definitely appreciate that from her. From the jump, she was like, okay, if we're gonna start getting to know each other, start getting yourself cleaned up, like cut your hair, trim your beard, whatever you got going on there, looking all homeless or whatever, we gotta fix that.
Don't you love it? Yeah. But it's for the good. Look good, feel good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes when you get off the well-worn path, you stop brushing your hair, or maybe it's not taking a shower, maybe it's not, cutting your fingernails, like little things, like simple hygiene things, and they really change how you feel, and then how you dress, right? It makes
Mhm.
a difference. And because one of the questions I was going to ask you is, what kind of gave you that strength to change and to find that new direction? And it sounds like meeting your wife was a big piece of that, as well as staying true to your faith, right?
Yeah, I would say the biggest part was meeting her and the challenges she would give me, and
Hmm.
then also her explaining her story, and then me opening up and explaining like my upbringing and what's been going on in my life at that time. She basically asked me, "Hey, do you want to be in this position forever, or do you want to do something about it?" Of course, I told her, "Well, I don't want to be here always." She's like, "Okay, well then stop complaining and do something about it,
Right.
because the only person to fix it is you." And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I could do that.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a little bit of encouragement, right? If you really look at the full picture, the people that you cut off, the people you left behind, they were selfish, maybe, or they were one sided when it came to your relationship. And then it's like you finally met someone that was willing to focus on both sides, right? Meet you where you're at and grow with you and become a better person with you, right? Someone to join you in that journey from the boy you were then to the man you are now, right? I could speak tremendously on my own life, how people think, oh, because again, you're men, you're strong, you have no emotions. Well, just because we're good at hiding emotions doesn't mean we don't have emotions, right? And
Exactly.
sometimes having that person in our lives, for a lot of men, it's often their wives, bringing out the better version of you and challenging you to do better, be better, and be the man that they know you can be. That's instrumental in bringing out the best version of yourself. And it gives you someone to work towards, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for yourself and for her. And then maybe
Yeah.
someday a family, right? I have 3 kids, and there's a lot of days I wouldn't want to get out of bed if it was just me, but being married, and then you see the kids, and it's a purpose, right?
Exactly.
So I love the story you're sharing, because it really resonates with me, and I know it's going to resonate well with a lot of our audience, because we talk to different people all the time who have different upbringings, and you don't really get to hear enough about how people put their trust in their faith.
Mhm.
And what really brings you from where you were to where you are now. So if there was someone else in your shoes, maybe a younger Christopher,
Mhm.
what would you say to them if they were having trouble, sort of in a similar situation?
If I was speaking to my younger self, I would essentially like sit them down and be like, "Hey, it's okay to cry,
Right.
or like it's okay to at least verbalize what you're feeling, whether it might be you might think it's small or it's a big thing."
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, the biggest part or the hardest part for me growing up, and if I was to do things differently, it would be communication. Given that from the outside, of course, everything looks perfect looking in,
Mm-hmm.
but then inside, it's like I struggle with communicating. I struggle with voicing my opinion in certain cases. It was always a concept of like being respectful to your elders.
Whether you liked it or not. Right?
Yeah, whether I like it or not, even though it was no fault to anybody there, it was more so of like being able to communicate properly. Say if I'm the adult and I'm talking to a younger person, it's like, hey, listen to me, but I still want to hear what your thoughts are. If your reasoning makes sense, then okay, I'll give you the reason. But if it still doesn't make sense, then I'll explain why and kind of like give you pointers and be like, all right, this is why I don't agree, but you're
Mm-hmm.
still allowed to at least voice and communicate. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say. More so of just like being able to communicate more, express your feelings more, and be open and honest with yourself and with other people around you, instead of just suffering in silence, which is what I did a lot of the time. And sometimes I have a tendency to lean in that direction.
Right. It's difficult too, because it's also a twofold sort of experience, right? And when you open up, you have to be surrounded by people who are also willing to hear you. If you're surrounded by, whether it's parents, guardians, friends, if no one's willing to hear you out, and that may be because no one heard them out as a kid, right? And they're passing down that same, essentially the same trauma, right? You got to be around people who are willing to listen, and if they're not, you have to find people who they don't necessarily have to understand you. They just have to be willing to understand, willing to hear you out, and value your opinion, despite whether you're 8 years old or 18 or 28, right? You hear the word therapy, we hear the word getting help, and most men are like, don't do that, that's stupid, that makes you look weak, you don't need help, you don't need to talk to someone about your feelings, right? Given your past and where you're at now, what do you have to say to that? I assume that would be a different story.
It's like a half and half. It's like a yes and no situation. Growing up, none of my parents knew, none of my extended family knew anything about mental health.
Yeah.
And if they did, it was always like hush hush, or they just didn't know what to do about it.
Hush or pray, right?
Yeah, hush or pray. Prayer is always good, but it's always about at least giving a little bit extra. Say if that person needs a little bit of extra help, like going to therapy or talking to somebody, then obviously go do that. If prayer works for you and that's all you need, okay, absolutely go do that. There's a lot of values that like my family instilled in me that I feel proud and I feel good about those kind of values in my life, and I apply that to every day, the daily life, and just with the maturity that I have in a different way. A saying that my pops always tells me is be better than me. If there's things that I see in him that I find good, then of course take that, but then try to strive for more than that. I think about it as like a rough cut diamond, like you grab a rough cut diamond,
right,
and then you polish it more, and then you keep polishing it until it's like a nice shiny little thing that you could put on a ring or something. I agree with taking therapy or going to therapy, because I did that a couple times before. The only thing is making sure that once you do the therapy, it's like making sure that it works for you. Because at least in my case, it worked for a certain amount of time, but then eventually got to the point where when I was talking to the therapist, it's like I was basically giving, but then answering my own questions, or like giving myself essentially like therapy while the other person was just kind of sitting there listening and not giving too much feedback. And maybe that could be because I'm married to somebody that's in the field. So that could be the case as well, that I've learned a lot. Eventually, like I stopped doing therapy, but then I just started applying like the tools in my tool belt kind of thing. Whatever I've learned throughout the years, trying to apply it in the best way I can. And if I like need an outside opinion, then of course the first person I'm going to turn to is my wife.
That's awesome. Finding the right therapist is also important too. There's different therapists for everyone, and you got to find someone who has experience, of course, with what you're looking for, what you're needing, but also someone that can relate to you and understand your story is a really big piece of it too. I commend you for getting help and for taking those steps, because again, it's very difficult for most men, even grown men, right? Even men that got to the other side, they still and I could include myself in that boat. There's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't need help, I got it, and there's times where you really didn't have it, right? You may have actually needed help. If you could leave one thing with anybody else watching this, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, because with this whole process, it's like with getting better with yourself or just learning more about all this, you're going to get your hands dirty. It's not a clean cookie cutter process. It's not like you put a band-aid on it and you're all good to go and you're ready to keep going. It's like, okay, you're going to trip, you're going to fall, scrape your knee, you get back up again, you walk a little bit more, maybe you hit a wall this time, and then you have to turn around and go again, or like find a different route. It's like getting your hands dirty, being patient with yourself. That's another thing, being patient and giving grace. Sometimes I make a lot of the same mistakes over and over again. Eventually it turns into like a frustration thing where it's like, I already know how to fix it, but then I still fall into the same thing. So like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
So I would say just be patient and give yourself grace. That would be the best piece of advice, and just set a goal in mind and just keep at it. Whether you feel the goal is way too far ahead, slow and steady. And that's where Relentless Forge came along. I've always had the idea in my head of creating my own business and having that be like my 9 to 5. instead of working for somebody else, I could work for myself. I want to see my passion, see my capabilities, and what I've learned how to do throughout the years as a professional in this field, and just like give that to people. I want my creativity and all that to shine, and also just be able to help somebody in need, or use my talents to help someone or motivate someone too.
Right.
At first I thought it was just a distant dream, and I should push from my wife and everyone else around me. They're like, oh, well, why don't you try? I mean, if you don't try, you'll never know. And then slowly but surely, I'm getting the hang of it, pushing through the hurdles. I'm excited to see how this journey unfolds and be able to show everyone that somebody that came from humble beginnings, you're capable of doing it if you apply yourself and try.
Absolutely. That's a lot of real firsthand, real world experience that you're bringing to the table right there. You started in one spot, and where you're going and where you'll end up, it's a whole journey that you're learning to enjoy, and that you're going through that process, and to be able to look back and bring your passion to life and stand behind what Christopher feels, believes in, and loves to do, right? And to be able to show that to the world, to not only inspire people, but also let people know that if you're capable, then they're capable too, right? Only you have to be willing to risk going further than where you are now in order to know how far you can actually go. So I commend you on taking the steps to even starting a business. A lot of people get stuck exactly where they're at, and they're like, well, I would do this, but, right? And then they never really get it off the ground, or never truly pursue it out of fear. So having the courage to take the steps you're taking, that's 90% of the battle, right? So I know you're going to do great things with Relentless Forge. Relentlessforge.com is the address for anybody wanting to check out Christopher and what they have going on over there. They do engineering and prototyping. Christopher, I appreciate you taking time, out of your day to not only speak with me, but to share your story and help inspire other people, because that's what you're doing here. You're not just sharing your story. You're creating a movement, right? You're helping people understand that it's okay to be here and want to be somewhere different, and it is possible to get there. So sharing your story is going to be an inspiration for other people. So I just really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be talking to me about your story. So
of course, I'm happy to be here. I know what it's like to start from nothing and then be the best that I can. It's all about just work in progress.
Absolutely. You're a living example, Christopher. I love it. And appreciate everybody watching this, and we'll see you all on the next episode of Honest Providers Podcast.